Well, good morning, everyone.
Morning, everyone.
Morning, everyone.
Great to see you all. Good.
This is wonderful seeing everyone, and thank you very much, Jean-Marc, for the wonderful introductions. We were backstage and we were just thinking, we've been around for a while, Mr. Minister.
Well, you've been elected for longer than me. That's one thing that I saw. And thank you very much for everyone. You said you learn of it on Monday. Just take it as passion, Mayor, because I really wanted to come to Regina. But we have a few things in town. We have the King of Sweden with the Queen. We have the Prime Minister visit to the UAE. And I said, I want to be in Regina. So let's try to fix that within the schedule. My team said, you know, sir, it's not exactly in the same direction. And I said, let's make it work. So we landed late, Mayor, but we are here this morning. And I want to thank Suma. And I feel, Randy was telling me, I come from rural Canada. So, you know, I come from Shawinigan. Remember the other guy? I hate they call him the little guy. He's 6'5", so it doesn't help me much. But I just want to say, I understand the reality of Saskatchewan and rural Canada. You know, my writing is buried in Belgium. So I always say that to people, 34 municipalities. So I feel connected with the region, with Saskatchewan. And I just want to say up front, because there might be Jim might be with us, Jim Reiter, my dear colleague from Saskatchewan. She's a great colleague. I think I'm happy to share more. Also Gordon Wyant, which I want to say, Randy, I don't know if Gord is there. Gord has been, for all of those, and I'll try to speak in the microphone so Gord, it gets in the news. Gord has been a key partner over more than a decade that I've been in government to maintain a very constructive, forward-looking relationship between Ottawa and Regina and Saskatchewan. So Gord, I just want to give you a big round of applause because you've been an amazing partner, and I know it's an interview, I'll stop there, but after that I'm going to see your premier. It's funny, Scott texted me the day before I was coming, and I said, you don't need to text me, I'm coming to see you. So we're going to see each other just after, and then we're going to Moose Jaw, and then driving to Saskatoon onward to Winnipeg. So it's a good day today, but it's a good start, and Mayor, we're glad to be here. I think there's a lot of good things for Saskatchewan, for Regina, for the prairies and the budget, you know, when I look back and what we can do together. So just want to say thank you. I know it's somewhat early, but appreciate that Suma, as the moment we said we would be coming, you were the first one to raise your hand and say, let's do that together. So Randy, thank you very much. And congratulations, the second oldest film festival. I can tell you, I'll market that around the world more than ever, you know.
Yorkton Film Festival, the only festival older, and it's 2 weeks older, is in that little festival in South France. You may know it, Cannes.
Somehow, yeah.
Yeah, you might have heard of it.
It's French.
Well, Minister, this has been my dream, hosting you, of course, but also we're on the stage of the Globe Theatre here in Regina. I did some live theatre in high school and university, and this is a dream that I'm on the stage.
Well,
how about you?
I feel the same. Ralph Goodell, you may remember Ralph. Good old Ralph talked to me when I was back, I think, Mayor, I was a Minister of Infrastructure at some stage in my term in Ottawa. But I think Ralph talked to me about the Globe Theatre, and for once when I was walking with the Executive Director, I said, did we do well? He said, yes, you're fine, Minister. You did fine, it's part of it, because, you know, over a decade, you never know what happens. You know, you have dreams, you have objectives, but they turn out into reality. But it is an amazing, it's an amazing center, and I'm glad that this is the kind of thing where we said, yes, it's an investment budget, but it's all about people and protecting our identity, our culture, who we are as Canadians. And I think a theater like that speaks for itself. So like you, I'm glad that I could be, who I would have known when I signed that thing that day that I would be on stage in the theater. So glad that it worked out, and glad for the community, because it's not about us, it's the community who really made that. And I remember I've been told that the legislature was here, the RCMP was here. I mean, this is a building, where's my friend who explained all that to me? The Director General explained to me the long history of the Globe Theatre, and now almost 100 years, or thereabout, it's back to the community. So great to be with you.
Well, thank you for being here, and we'll get back to why we're here, and that's talking about your budget that was announced on November 4th and has passed. So do you have anything you would like to update us on or talk about when we get to the budget? And then I've got a few questions for you.
Well, yeah, it passed indeed. You know, that was, and I hope Canadians see that. I made some comments that I know sometimes you want to elevate beyond politics. I mean, we need to meet the moment. The frame I often present is that we're facing some headwind. I mean, we feel it in the field here. I can think of our canola farmer. I can think of folks who are on the shop floor, in the family table. People understand there's some headwind, you know. I often say the speed, scope, and scale of change is quite unprecedented. Some would go back to 1945, some would say the fall of the Berlin Wall. I mean, but you have to go back far in history where you see geopolitics, the rule-based order, the trading relationship, technology, if you couple AI, quantum, cyber, all that at a speed that I think, I mean, I'm looking at the people in the room, we're not likely to see something like that very often in our lifetime. And I just don't say that, you know, Canada presides the G7 this year. And I was with my colleagues, Scott Bresson, and all the others in Washington. And I think there's a feel that the world is undergoing significant change, and Canada is no exception, you know. We have been blessed by geography, particularly here in the prairies where we're kind of at the center of logistics in North America. But there's no doubt that our southern neighbor has taken a different path in different respect. You know, now there's a cost to enter the market in the United States for every country in the world. And therefore, we see that sea of change. So once you know that, you say, okay, when, again, we're in Washington, the International Monetary Fund said there's really two countries in the world. And it's not me, it's the Director General said there's only two countries in the world which can, in this new world, really have a chance to succeed better than others. And she mentioned Germany and Canada, which is about telling. So you have the fiscal capacity, we have the foundations to navigate that new world, as long as you make strategic investment. And that's where it comes to the capital investment versus expenses, where when you invest in infrastructure, and I can think if you're in Saskatchewan, it matters, because these trade corridors gets you to market, removing the bottleneck. I was with Premier Eby just a few days ago talking about these bottleneck to the coast and beyond, you know, talking to CPKC, talking with CN, how can we make trade more fluid at a time where we need to develop new markets and export more. And if you have so you invest in infrastructure, we need to invest in housing. I think, Mayor, you mentioned it, this is the affordability issue, and I think housing is a pillar of affordability. If you can find a home you can afford and not spend too much of your income on housing, then, you know, affordability becomes something that you can manage certainly better from a family perspective. Then you say, the challenge we had in our nation, I'm 55, so as long as I could read, I guess, you go back, was about competitiveness and productivity. And Gordon and others, I mean, we've been talking about these things, all of us for ages, say, okay, how can we make Canada more competitive, more productive? Because our standard of living depends on that over the long term. And lastly, I would say, people say, yeah, that's okay, I get it, you know, affordability, it's the end of the week, the end of the month. Your vision of the future is like bringing us to where we need to be. But at the same time, you need to put the house in order. Canadians have been tightening their belt for quite some time, I would say probably since COVID and maybe even before. And they say, well, you in Ottawa needs to tighten up. And that's the 60 billion of savings that we led and were able to find to make sure that, you know, we are in sync with Canadians. So my view is that this has been seen, I think, you know, as really, when I said transformational, and I'll stop there, but when I compare what we've done in Canada, and some journalists have said, why would you say that? I said, well, listen, you can look in absolute term and have your own opinion. But if you look in relative terms in the G7, the similar plan that exists is the one in Europe, or Germany, which is called the generational, they have a word for that. If you compare that, they've put 500 billion euros over 12 years. That would be roughly the equivalent of 800 billion Canadian. We're putting 450 billion cash over 5 years. So, and my economy, the Canadian economy, is about half of Germany. So when you look at that, we are really changing the course of the country in a way that I would say in the G7 today, we're probably the one which has the strong, well, certainly the clear vision to really build for the future, the strongest balance sheet, and the will to bring this country forward at a time where, I'll leave it with you just to think, but you may have seen or not, we put it in the budget, but the International Monetary Fund published something called the Uncertainty Index, which is just looking at the world. And believe it or not, today we are about twice as much as when we were during the financial crisis. That's how they see the world. So in a world which is uncertain, and I remember I said to the team there in Washington, I said, we cannot let uncertainty become the new certainty. We need to provide stability, predictability, the rule of law, and that's the kind of thing that will attract investment, mayors, and all of you, because all of you serve in many ways as leaders. So the Prime Minister and I wanted to provide that kind of roadmap, crowd in private investments, make Canada more competitive, fix the housing or contribute to fix the housing issue, build the infrastructure so we can export our canola and products to market and our peas and everything we produce in Canada, while at the same time also invest in one of the key pillars, which is our military, and that's why I'm going to go to Moose Jaw to thank our men and women who serve, to give them, because protecting our sovereignty is obviously essential in times like that.
Well, and thank you for that, Minister, and you mentioned tightening our belts. And we in municipalities across this province have been doing that for many years. But we also want to thank you for the recognition that you provided in the budget about the contributions of our municipalities with the infrastructure and the nation building. So we thank you for that. But we do have several questions. So if you're okay, I'm going to start.
Sure.
Okay. So we are pleased to see that. But we are also concerned that the vast majority of funding in the fund around Build Community Strong has already been allocated to municipalities through the Canada Community Building Fund and the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund. So with the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program that's fully allocated, municipalities badly need a new tri-party infrastructure fund with all partners at the table. So what's your government plan for municipal infrastructure funding as we move forward throughout the next few years that you talked about?
And it's a very good question, and one which is very relevant if you're in front of SUMA and you know, Reeves and others who have to manage you know, the local balance sheet in our municipalities. What we did, we tried to put that in a more, part of what we're doing, and at least we're in the way, is streamlining programs, Randy, because I must say, as a federal minister, I must say sometimes I felt that we have too many programs. You know, it's pretty difficult if you're, and I have some municipalities, Randy, that, you know, the city council is kind of the neighbors in the sense that, you know, the capacity to access all these, I would say, suite of programs become a bit complex and difficult, let's be honest. So one of the things was to streamline that, try to put that under one bigger umbrella with certainly three components. The one which you would be very familiar is the one which is the Build Canada Strong, which is basically what the former gas tax transfer, you know, that was collected and transferred to municipality. That obviously stayed because that provides you the stability and funding that you need for sewers, for wastewater, for the municipal infrastructure you need. At the same time, provinces have been asking us across the nation to really shoulder a bit more of the infrastructure, you know, because we want to talk about housing, but that comes with infrastructure that you need to build in our municipalities. And therefore we say we would do that. We would also have a carve out for health infrastructure. Many provinces came to me and said, Minister, our hospitals need support, you know, the clinics, all that, the health infrastructure is decaying and we need to do more, so we carve out something there. And then we kept what we call like a direct program to make sure that, you know, things like the Globe Theatre, that we could see things that would be matter for the community. Sometimes I'm always reminded, maybe because when you serve in rural communities, people are happy that we do a mine, people would be happy that we invest in, you know, in building our capacity in the nuclear sector, building our capacity in, you know, economic sector across the nation, but they would say, so what about me? What about my community? What about the local things that will make life better for people? So we kept a stream there to make sure we can continue to support that. But one thing that we streamlined program, but we also added 22 billion of new money in infrastructure, generally in parts of, part is going to be to the provinces and territory, part is going to be through direct funding that we do with municipalities, which is working very well. And I know you like that because I've heard, people like this interaction between the federal government and municipalities, and then keeping a direct stream to be able to really support the projects that would matter to people locally. Because, like I said, there's still a need to have something to support projects like Globe and others that we've seen. And programs like, I think, the University of Saskatchewan, University of Saskatoon. We've been partners in research and science in colleges, universities. So we kept a bit of money for that, but the envelope is 51 billion. And if you compare that again to what they've done in Germany, which is seen as the reference point, you'd see that Canada compares well in terms of rebuilding. And that you add to the corridor, the trade corridor, which is another 5 billion, the Arctic Fund, which is $1 billion. It's really, for me, we really need to see how we're going to build Canada of the future. This budget was really about these kind of capital investments in our municipalities, in our provinces, in the north, that are going to make Canada more resilient. And also, and I'll stop there, but using also the defense investment. You may have seen 80 billion in cash over 5 years. That is significant. This is not something in Canada that we have had to shoulder, let me put it this way. But in this new world, there's an understanding, I think Canadians say we need to defend our sovereignty. But if we're going to do that, we need to do that in a smart way. And I'm saying that because in many places, that will mean dual use assets, whether it's a runway, a port, an airport, a community we need to build. We just need to be smart in how we are going to use that money that's going to go to defense. And Canada, perhaps unlike other NATO nations or certainly the G7, for us, we still have so much to build in the north. And you may have seen even I put something in the budget. And Gord, you would remember when you did these things, I made sure it's there so I can continue to pursue it. I'm not there yet, but I'm trying and say how we provide healthcare services in the north and how we work with First Nation communities and the Inuit communities to say this whole thing of fly in, fly out for routine medical services. I said that there's a huge human cost to that. There must be a better way. So now with the armed forces, with the different departments involved, trying to look at better ways to deliver. For example, if you're going to have a forward base in place, we should probably have a clinic to not only serve those who are going to serve at the base, but also the community. So it's kind of rethinking and trying to leverage in a way that we've not had to do in Canada much better this defense. Our friends down south have done that for decades, using defense investments for research and development, for colleges, for universities, for many of their industries. And I think we need to learn from that, and that's certainly what we want to do. Think about nuclear. Obviously, this is we're going to be an ag superpower, and I'm proud when I'm here because that's one thing. This is a bit of unfinished business, I call it. How do we have a lot of ag tech, we have a lot of clean tech, but we say we're going to be an energy superpower, but I'd like to say we are going to be also an ag superpower because Canada has, has the wherewithal, but also if you think about traceability, reliability, Canada brand, it's very powerful around the world. So how can we bring that to the next level? And I cannot not talk about uranium and chemical when you're here and potash. We have so much that we can use these as key anchors to really put Canada on the world stage.
Well, thank you, Minister. And when you're talking about considering the future, and we thank you for the direct funding that came through the Canada Community Build Fund, have you considered tying that to GDP and indexing that fund? Because the cost for our municipalities, for our infrastructure continues to grow, and our revenue sources have not grown in the same rate.
Well, that's an interesting question. It's like in the military side when people said, Minister, you should be happy, your GDP is going to grow. I said, yes, but my 5% is a 5% of GDP on defense. So the more GDP grows, the more I need to invest to keep our commitment to our NATO partners. So I hear you, and I know it's a real issue. What we tried to do was really to, this is like, I don't know if people have seen it the way it is really meant to be, but this is really changing the course. If we're on a ship, you and I, on a container ship, we're changing course, to say that in 3 years, we're going to balance our operating expenses with revenues. I mean, this is a major shift in how we have been operating and conducting budget, at least federally. where you say what you're going to borrow in 3 years from now is going to go to capital formation, leaving you more space, because direct expense program had increased at about 8%. That's not sustainable. That's just not sustainable. We need to get back to, we're going back to less than 1%. But to your point, if our GDP grows, there might not be an exact formula, but if GDP grows and we have the fiscal discipline that we intend to adopt, that's going to leave more to support municipalities, to support, and there's many ways we can do that, because if we shoulder with you, for example, more of the municipal infrastructure, that leaves you and other mayors and reeves to have more room in order to do other things you need to do. Or, for example, the fund that we kept to support community building projects like this one,
Yes.
that would support you, because that goes in your balance sheet in many ways. And if we can be a partner in building that park, in building that arena, in building that hockey ring, I mean, it's removing fiscal pressure that you have. So for now, we're more on the side of saying, how can we support you? We hear you. There's a huge housing, I would say, endeavor in the country, which needs to involve municipalities, provinces, the federal government. I think we're well on our way to do that. And I'm, particularly proud to be in Saskatchewan and Regina, because when I look at this budget, and I was reflecting on the way over, and the flight was delayed, so I had even more time to reflect. When I was reflecting, I said, if you're in Saskatchewan and Prairies and in Regina, what's in it for me? And for me, I was really thinking of the infrastructure you have here around the nuclear industry, the mining industry. There was some people from the mining industry said, I was sitting in place and they said, thumbs up, we really see critical minerals. I mean, if you look at Canada today, not only we have the fiscal capacity, but when you sit at these tables, you say, well, Canada is still a big magnet for talent. And this is true I was with the president of University of Regina, which was in line with me to board, University of Saskatchewan. I mean, we are a magnet for talent. And talent is key, and we even put $1.7 billion to attract the best mind in the world, the H1B1 that may want to move. So, you start with people, because that's where, if you have the best and brightest that have helped grow our country and our research center, our colleges, and our business to innovation, we're in a good place. Then you say, what kind of large industry we have? We're a huge mining, I would say, power. We are certainly on the ag side and the food side, we're certainly a world leader. Then we build ships, we build cars, we build planes. We have a very large industrial base, and very few countries have that. It's only when you compare, you say, find me a country who does all these things, and a leader in AI and quantum and cyber. We're the first country in the world to have an AI national strategy, way before it was fashionable, and quantum. So Canada was like 5-7 years ahead. Well, we need to continue to catch up. The world has catch up, and we need to invest. Then you say, okay, we have critical minerals. And I think critical minerals are going to be akin a bit to oil in the 20th century, where those who are going to be able to explore, extract, refine, and that's why I love Saskatchewan, because the Institute is at the forefront of refining, which is the name of the game. Then you can become the supplier of choice, and we had the King and Queen of Sweden yesterday with the Deputy Prime Minister, and we're saying, why don't we work together, for example, on refining joint ventures? Because refining these minerals is going to be key, because they are essential to our lives and even beyond, defense and all other sectors. Then you say we have abundance of energy. And lastly, we are the only G7 country which has a free trade agreement with all the other G7 nations. So you look at the world which is today, and you say, which country can boast to have preferential market access to 1.5 billion consumers? Canada has. And the Prime Minister is in the Middle East to expand that. We're looking with other nations as well. So I feel that if we, one thing that it might be, you always try to see what's good from the period we live in. I think it's been kind of a wake-up call to become our own best customers, for example. That this Buy Canadian policy for me is so essential. I mean, I remember when I started in Ottawa, it was called open by default. I kind of say, why not Canadian by default? I mean, what is that? The world is changing. Don't need to be the Boy Scout in the room. We're gonna, there's national security exemption. There's other things that countries do. So we're gonna be respectful of what we have committed, but at the same time, we're gonna favor our domestic industry. we're going to boast a bit about Canada. We need to brag. Yeah. I mean, it's not really in our DNA, but I look at our nuclear industry. There's a lot to be bragging about. And I keep saying, there's very few people waking up in the morning thinking about Canada. So each and every one of us need to be there. I remember with Scott Moe, we were at an event, I think at one of international event, and we just need to learn a bit to tell our story a bit better, to say Canada is certainly one of these powerhouses. So when you look at all these things together, I think that in a world that is changing, it's certainly a very positive signal, I would hope. And I know that if you're a farmer today here, and you listen to that, you say, what about, you know, the canola, the peas, and all that? We've been over-reliant, and anyone in finance would say diversification is key. Whether it's our southern neighbor or some markets in Asia, I think this vision we have to double our overseas export from 300 billion to 600 billion is going to make us more resilient. We need to move from reliance to resilience, and the world is craving for Canadian products. Like all of you people, we just need to make sure it's a bit more fluid. You know, interprovincial trade, one Canadian economy. I mean, if we don't do it now, when are we going to do it? I don't know what else you need to bring people. I know Scott has been supportive of that. I saw BC yesterday signing an agreement, but you know, one Canadian economy, becoming our own best customers, leveraging our expenses in defense to build this country. I think those are the kind of things we're going to need to lift, and that's the vision we have, is to grow our economy and give ourselves more than anyone can take away from us.
Well, and thank you for that, and growing the pride that we have in our country. And I know that I think most of Canada was watching as our Saskatchewan Rough Riders bringing home the Grey Cup to where it really belongs.
It's tough for me to comment too much on a crowd like that. Yeah, big round of applause. I'm good sport. That's okay. That's fine. Prime Minister didn't invite me for that trip. I don't know why.
Well, and Minister,
passed next to the stadium yesterday.
I'm at the same hotel that your team from Montreal is staying at for the Vanier Cup that's going to be happening here this weekend. So there's another, some ways that we can build pride right across this country. But we talked backstage a little bit about our agricultural industry and many municipalities, including mine, the city of Yorkton, that has 2 canola crush plants. And we're just wondering, and you know some of the concerns that we have around our ag producers in this province, and just speak a little bit about what your budget has in their budget for our agriculture producers, both whether they're in the rural areas of our province or all of the ones, the producers, the manufacturers, the salespeople that are in our urban communities.
Well, it's been tough for our farmers. I mean, I hate to see that, because those are very hardworking people. They've invested a lot in their in the farm and in their equipment and everything. And you know, a farm today is also a kind of a technology hub. You know, when you go to these places, they adopted technology in a way which is quite extraordinary. And I hate, because it's not the first time, but they're often the ones who are impacted by geopolitics. And it must be very frustrating, because you're there, you wake up in the morning, you do everything you can, and somehow the geopolitics of the world, for which you have little control, is changing under your feet, and then your market is no longer as open as you used to have, and for which it leaves you in a more difficult situation. So what we did, as much as we did for, you know, like the auto workers, and let me start, you know, it really depends what you do in the country to feel the impact of these tariffs. You know, like we say, 85% of our trade is exempt because it's compliant with the trade agreement. Our effective tax rate or tariff rate is about 5.4%. But if you're in steel, you feel it directly. If you're in the forestry, if you're in the aluminum, if you're in the canola, you feel it very much. So what we've been trying to do is twofold. One is to support our farmers as much as we've done for our workers in these key industries, to say, not by their fault, but the market has shifted under their feet, in a way that we need to support them with agri stability. And we have a number of programs, agri stability. There's a marketing program to support them into shifting to other markets, And what we can do on our side is to expand markets. Going back to my diversification is that we do so many good things that the world needs and wants in a way, and traceability and quality, and people are craving for Canadian products. And so twofold, support the farmers. We've doubled also with Farm Credit Canada the kind of facility, because what people need is liquidity. It's kind of the bridge to a better situation. At the same time, then saying, okay, how can we open new markets? So when the Prime Minister was with the President of Indonesia and other countries we're talking to, a large nation would need and want our products so that we diversify. And then we just need to be, as much as we've been reliant on our southern neighbor for a lot of products, I think we have also been reliant on very few export markets for our canola, for our peas and lentils. And how do we diversify that in a way that we don't find ourselves at the mercy of geopolitics, which is shifting very rapidly, and in ways that if you're in the prairies, you have little control over. And therefore, the best way to insulate ourselves from that is to have more market opportunities. And I would say Saskatchewan has been doing a great job in opening up offices around the world. Yes. I know that the Premier has been looking to promote Saskatchewan, put Saskatchewan flag in many places to make sure that the story of Saskatchewan and the products of Saskatchewan are top of mind for foreign buyers. But we need to do more. Listen, this is a brand new world. I often say 9 months has changed the world in a way that we're probably not going to see again. So therefore, we rely on trade, we rely on open trade, we rely on rule-based trade, and therefore we need to go in these markets. But I look at the TPP, which is giving us access to Japan, giving us access to Vietnam. Demography is destiny. So if you go in markets with huge demography, well, obviously you're going to have that. And it's also for us, you've seen the re-engagement with China in the matter with eyes wide open, but also to try to see how can we resolve this long-standing issue around canola.
Oh, thank you very much for that from all our urban communities and our producers in rural Saskatchewan. And as I travel around this province, as you do around the country, SUMA has about 440 members, which are villages, resort villages, towns, cities, and northern municipalities. And the key thing, one of the key issues that we're hearing is around community safety, public safety. So with many of our communities being policed by the RCMP, and then we have communities that have their own municipal forces, where do you see your budget and going in the next few years supporting, first of all, the RCMP, and then some of the concerns coming around? We now know, and thank you for the new bail reforms that are coming into play, but those are going to bring some additional costs, whether it's to the judicial or whether it's to the different institutions. So where do you see in your budget and future budgets going with that?
Well, first of all, we've added 1,000, we've put in a budget to hire 1,000 RCMP officers. I would say safety is key. The first duty we have, whether it's federal, provincial, or municipal, is protecting our citizen. And that is clearly something that, and you saw also in the budget that we protected the investment we made when it comes to our CMP, other national security agencies, and our military to make sure we do that. That's the first thing. The second thing, which is probably less talked about, is that I intend to create a financial crime agency. And the reason for that is that you want to follow the money. Mm-hmm. One of the best ways for me to track the people who do these crimes, whether it's money laundering or these drug traffickers or others, is to up our game when it comes to financial crime. And we're modeling that with the best of the best. I was with the Guardia di Finanza in Italy. We were just in Washington with the FBI, Treasury Department, to really learn, because today, there's crime at the city level, but oftentimes these structures are becoming almost like national, if not even international. It's when you talk to these folks who do that on a daily to try to prevent crime, you see, but you saw yesterday even the RCMP with the FBI, there's kind of a transnational nature to these things. You know, it goes from the street dealer, but there's structures, you know, most of them operate in very integrated or loosely integrated structure. And one of the best way we're looking is really to have, you know, Canada will be modeling our financial crime agency with the UK. So we'll be probably best in class in terms of really tracking, because today, and I know it goes from like the dealer, but think about that when we were with the FBI and Treasury, if you couple, think about that, quantum, AI, cyber, and telecom, these things happen at a speed that even those who have the largest enforcement agencies, we need to cooperate better, because all these things happen in real time. They go from the street to, like I said, loosely organized or very integrated organization. Money flows in a way that is very quick, you know, with cryptocurrency. I mean, there's so many things that you need to be best in class, because for me, follow the money is always the best place. If you can track them, you know that, Jean-Marc, better than me. You're the RCMP guy. But if you can track where it is, monitor that, disrupt, intercept, arrest, you know, from the top down, I think we're going to make our city safer, in addition to the bail reform, in addition to adding police officers. But for me, the Financial Crime Agency, I mean, obviously these things take a bit of time to see the impact on the street, but you always want to make sure that you're the jurisdiction which is the toughest to crack, because crime tends to move away. They tend to go to the lowest or the easiest place to do their business in a way, and therefore we want to make sure that this is going to be a very tough place for them to move money around or to, and for example, I'll give you an example. We banned, Canada was one of the few countries where you could pay cash more than 10,000. We're not going to prevent, if you're not going to be able to pay cash more than 10,000, and that, you know, from the organized crime folks that I know, you know, it was legal in Canada to go, and some were using that to go buy expensive cars, because it was not illegal to pay income with that amount of cash. No one in his right mind today would think this is the best way to do. So all these things are you know, having an impact, and we work with the RCMP, other crime, other agencies which fight crime, to really be surgical. I can tell you another one that people have not talked, it's not in the budget, but I've put these jammers in prisons to prevent people to be able to run their whatever organization. Those are the kind of things that they don't make the headline, but they make the life of criminals very difficult. So I'm probably not very popular.
We're okay with that, Minister.
Yeah, I'm very okay too.
So many of our communities across Saskatchewan, and I know you've heard this right across Canada, are experiencing concerns in our local communities around mental health and addictions and homelessness. And thank you for the work you're doing on housing. But of course, you know, that is the responsibility of our provincial government. We know that the federal government has been putting funds to assist with that. But it doesn't appear that there's going to be funding after the 2027 year. So we're just wondering what your considerations are and where you're going with that to be able to assist our communities with mental health and addictions that are happening on our streets, in our schools, around our businesses in our province.
Well, it's a big thing, and I think the fact that we have extended, and Gord could help me with that because you served for a long time as well, but I don't think the federal government has been in health infrastructure, at least that I can remember. That's kind of a new place, and this is really to respond to the needs that we've heard from communities, from people, from you and others who have said, can you give us a hand when it comes to health infrastructure, because that is really something where, you know, a lot of provincial budget in health is constrained. You know, there's a lot of demand. I think we'll need to revisit that, I would say, at the time, but, you know, how do we use better use of technology, processes? I think there's something to be done. You know, adding money is not always the best solution to everything, but certainly we'll have to see how we work with provinces to adopt new methods when it comes, and probably new processes and technology. To your point, a number of these things have still 1 or 2 years to go. The fact that we have not indicated that a renewal now does not prejudge what we're going to do in the future. I just want to, because often these things, you know, we have programs that have, you know, are set to be reviewed at every 5 years or something. And it is natural, there's always a concern from the affected groups or communities say, well, what's going to happen in 2 years from now if it's sunsetting at that date? And as you would appreciate when you're doing this budgeting, there's things we will have to do, but we don't need to necessarily put it now. But I think people should feel confident that mental health has been at the forefront of the concerns that we have been trying to partner, like you said, with the provinces to affect. And I think a number of the things we're doing there are going to be helpful. I can think even, you know, infrastructure for mental health as well, you know, because if you have, I've done it even in my own community, I've seen it, where we have, you know, more adapted housing, affordable housing for people who would need certain care, but they don't need to be they don't need to be in a hospital or other facility. So there's like a different way to address that, and I think oftentimes it starts also with housing, and housing which is purpose-built to address some of the concern and help people to be able to live a normal life.
Well, Minister, the next question is about the future of Canada. And I'm going to ask you about our youth prospects in Canada. We know, and you said you stood in line with the presidents of the universities here getting on your plane. So youth prospects in Canada have been talked about more and more every day. So changes to immigration, and we've seen this here in our province, may well result in higher tuition fees, with fewer foreign students paying into the university coffers. And then the other thing that comes into play, and we're experiencing it in our province, the cost of old age security. So it's expected to top out at $108 billion annually by 2030, so in the very near future, with an income cap for the benefits of $150,000 annually. So what is your government looking, what are your plans to ensure that young people can see the same standard of living that people in this room have been experiencing?
I think that's something that we should all be reflecting upon. I mean, obviously, this. Thank you for asking that question, because I read something about this Gen Z generation, which is concerned, and we've seen different things around the world, and really about giving them hope. It's not just about, you know, saying that it's going to be okay. You know, we're putting the things in place for you. I would say putting our house in order is a lot also for future generation. You know, when I said young people were stopping me and said, what have you done for me lately? Well, there's research, there's science, there's the grants we've done to make sure they can go to college and university. But I said, don't forget that the infrastructure we build is going to be mainly to support also your generation. You know, you think about the railway we built across Canada and what is done to the prairies. I mean, some of these things that we're going to do this generation is a gift to the next generation. We've not done a lot. That's why we need to double down now, because if you look what is our generations have done for the future generation, I think this budget is trying to answer that and say we need to leave the place in a better state than where we found it, so that they can prosper. You know, opening trade, for example, if you're a young person and you say, okay, in 5-10 years from now, but assuming Canada will have reached its objectives, you know, you're going to be able to trade with the world. You will have perhaps been able to start your businesses with a number of incentives we have. Housing will be more affordable. Infrastructure will allow you to move freely across the country. We would have debottleneck, we would have done port expansion, we would have launched our natural resources, our critical minerals were going to be essential, our ag sector is going to feed a good part of the world. I mean, those are kind of structural change, and I appreciate if you're a young person in the street, say, okay, I get it, this is like I get the vision, but what about next week, what about next month, what about next year? And that's what we've been trying to balance, like I said, in this budget, was affordability, which is now the tax cut and helping first-time home buyers at the same time, then the vision. You know, you try to balance both, because I appreciate if you're a young person today, that's why, for example, we protected science and research, and I even got a hug for that yesterday from your president. because he said we protected our CMP, we protected the military, we protected the funding for women organizations, which are and continuing our initiative against gender-based violence in the country, which is very worthwhile, and we protected science and research. And at the same time that we found savings across. But for me, you know, the science of today is the economy of tomorrow. So there's many ways you can look at that if you're a young person. What have you done for me lately? Mm-hmm. There's kind of the short term, but there's also structural things that you can look. And if we had not made these choices, you could have impaired the long-term future, because time is on their side, but we need to do structural change. And it's true at the federal level, but I would say, Randy, we need you as well. Think about Buy Canada. You know, I said it's just about time that the federal government do that, but we need to do that at the provincial level. I wrote to Jim, and Jim was on board. We need to do that at municipal level. We need to do that at corporate Canada level, because our biggest power is our purchasing power. I mean, we do some at the federal level, but if all of us, and I challenged Canadian CEOs, I was in Toronto recently, and I said, we're going to launch something. I said, I'd like to have 50 CEOs who come next to me and say, we're going to buy, you know, Buy Canada by default, you know, however you want to call that. But if we give a chance to this startup, you know, what people have been asking me, Randy, it's kind of, people in the room will smile. Oftentimes they say, Minister, we don't want a grant. We don't want a loan. We want you to be our customer. You know, if you're just our customer, we're all going to be fine. Be our customer, because it's tough for us to go sell in another country when my own government is not even buying from us. So you talk about innovation, you talk about startups, you talk about companies, you know, how do we make us our own best customers? And so this is one of the things that we could do. And I think because I cannot be in Saskatchewan and not think about, for example, nuclear. I mean, you know, Canada is going to be the first country in the world to have a small modular reactor in function at Darlington. But this is because we have Cameco and Westinghouse and others who can offer the full suite of products. So Canada will be at the forefront of this, I think, of the nuclear renaissance in many ways, and be a partner there. You think about potash, you know, thinking about that being an ag superpower. I mean, there's a lot of things where we can structure the country and make sure that we will leave to the next generation a better place for that. Because for me, it's been too long where we realize that we need to be our own best customers, and interprovincial trade. You know, to have these things flowing across the nation. Many people would tell me, I come from Quebec, they say it's easier to sell in Vermont than to sell across Canada. It's crazy. I hope people understand. And now we live in a world where, and I'll stop there, but I could go on.
Well, Minister, I'm getting the stop from Jean-Marc.
But let me just say, yeah, Jean-Marc is, oh geez, and he's far bigger than me. Former RCMP as well. So, but I would just say, you know, people see today better than ever the nexus between energy security, economic security, and national security. And let me add food security. And I think when you blend that together, you realize what Canada can play. And we can play in a very key position. There's going to be a headwind. Let's focus on what we can control. Let's seize the moment. Let's not look down. Let's look up. You didn't win the Grey Cup because you were looking down. You won because you look up. We need to be as confident. No nation can be more confident than its leaders. And everyone in this room is a leader. We need to seize the moment, be confident, and be ambitious. And I'm very convinced that together we're going to make it.
Well, thank you very much, Minister. I have 3 or 4 other questions we didn't get to, so I'm going to invite you to come back to Saskatchewan.
Thank you.
Middle of April, we have the SUMA Convention. We have over 1,000 leaders from across this province that will be there, and I would absolutely love to continue this conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here this morning.
Minister, Randy, for this entertaining conversation. You know, you don't put on these events without